"Honey, we need to talk," Selma said to me as we drove the car home after taking our daughter Ashley to college. We'd be home in an hour in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, so we'd have plenty of time to talk. It's been an uncomfortable trip, though. "Yes, I think we should," I replied. I knew what she was going to say. "You still haven't fully forgiven me, even after 8 years. I think we need to see a counselor again. We should be able to put this in the past and look forward to our future, growing old together, traveling, and spoiling future grandchildren." I've been thinking about this trip home. I've been thinking about it for the past 8 years, shortly after that fateful day. The day I found out my wife was cheating on me. It was in the spring, 8 years ago. I was running some errands for work when out of the corner of my eye I saw something bright yellow. I looked over and saw a brand new yellow Nissan Xterra in the parking lot of the Doubletree Hotel. We had just bought this car 6 months prior, so the yellow color caught my eye. Parked next to it was a slightly different shade of yellow Pontiac Aztek. Our friends, Jim and Sheila Henderson, had bought it a few months ago. Selma and Sheila must be having lunch at the hotel restaurant, I thought to myself. I'll just stop by and say hi. So I pulled into the parking lot and parked next to my wife and Sheila's cars. I walked into the restaurant and looked around. I didn't see them, but there was a table that looked like 2 people had just eaten there. They must have gone to the restroom, I thought. So I headed to the entrance of the hotel where the restrooms were located. I waited there for about 5 minutes. I must be waiting in the wrong place, I thought. They were probably leaving the hotel as I was coming in the other entrance, so I walked over to the entrance and looked out. Both cars were still parked there and there was no one around them. I turned around and saw my wife holding hands with Sheila's husband, Jim. Jim then leans over and gives her a passionate kiss. They then turn to the front desk and return the room key card. I was stunned, to say the least, but I wasn't paralyzed by inaction. I retorted to the couple standing at the counter. I turned Jim around and yelled, "You fucking bastard!" and punched him right in the nose. Almost immediately, blood rushed out. My wife gasped, and I turned to her and said, "You bitch, you cheating whore! Don't come home tonight. I can't promise I won't do the same to you." I turned and ran out of the hotel. I took a quick step towards our cars. There were several dividers in the parking lot that were lined with trees and filled with palm-sized landscaping stones. I picked one up and threw it right through the windshield of Jim's car. The impact left a large dent and a web of cracks cascaded from it. I jumped into my car and drove out of the parking lot. I was so woozy that after a couple blocks I had to pull into the McDonald's parking lot to try to calm down. As I sat there trying to relax, my phone rang. I looked at the number. It was Selma. I screamed, "Bitch!" and turned the phone off. Then I said incomprehensibly out loud to someone, "I don't want to talk to you, bitch." How long has this been going on? I thought. They definitely looked quite comfortable with each other. Besides, they didn't look like they were trying to sneak in unnoticed. Their willingness to kiss while standing at the front desk was eloquent enough to know that they had been fooling around for quite some time. I had to tell Sheila. She had to hear it from me before Jim or Selma tried to do something about it. I turned my phone back on. There were already 3 messages on there. I ignored them and called Sheila. She was a homebody and only worked part-time at the library while her kids went to school. I hoped she had today off, or at least would be able to answer the phone. "Lucky me," she answered. "And how do I tell her that her husband is a cheating snake? I've always been somewhat of a straight shooter, so I did the straightforward thing." "Oh, hey, Kurt." Then she asked, "How can I help you?" She was in her work mode, so the expression just came naturally. "Sheila, I don't know how to tell you this, but I just caught Jim and Selma checking out of the hotel. They were very affectionate, so I have no doubt they were cheating on us." She awed and said, "Not again. Well, he just screwed himself to the wall." Wow, that wasn't the answer I was expecting. I said in confusion. "It's not the first time it's happened. In fact, to my knowledge, this is the 3rd time. I had a postnuptial agreement drawn up after the last one, and we both signed it. Any cheating by either of our parties meant that the cheater walks away with nothing and has to contribute to the household expenses and pay child support based on the percentage of income at the time. He would be paying the mortgage, child support, and spousal support. He screwed up. I knew it would happen again, but he begged me. He didn't want to be a part-time dad. Well, that's what he's going to be now. She was furious. However, I could tell she had been thinking about it, probably a lot since the first 2 times. When she mentioned the kids, it got me thinking. Our kids, Jason and Ashley, were the same age as Sheila and Jim's kids, Ethan and Emily. They were 12 and 10 years old, respectively. I knew I wanted a divorce, but I also knew I didn't want to be a part-time dad. Then Sheila asked, "How are you, Kurt?" "Honestly, I'm kind of in a daze. I don't know what to think or what to do. I guess I'll have to talk to a lawyer, see what my options are. I hate to say this, Kurt, but Selma will probably get custody of the kids and the house. You'll be a part-time father. I know you love your kids. Maybe you and Selma can work things out. I don't know. I'm just so angry right now. I can't even imagine being in the same room with her. Believe me, I know I've been in that state. I can't say I'm numb to it, but having been through it twice, I'm not surprised and therefore not as emotional about it, but I'm going to throw him over the coals. When he gets home, he'll probably have a broken nose. I hit him pretty hard. There was a lot of blood, I told her." "Serves him right," she said in a harsh tone. Then she said more gently, "I'm sorry, Kurt. I'm sure he started it all. Maybe you can work it out." "I don't know. I haven't had enough time to think about it. At this point, I need to start thinking about my kids and what's best for them. And Kurt, don't forget to take into consideration what's best for you." I appreciated her insight. She had a lot more time to think about it than I had, more time to look at it more objectively. Now, 8 years later, I talked to a lawyer. The sad truth was that unless I could prove that Selma was an unfit mother or dangerous or abusive to our 10 and 12-year-old children, she would likely get custody of our children, and I would be stuck in the role of part-time father, all the while paying for the house and child support. We made about the same amount of money, so there would be no spousal support. But it was a hollow victory if I couldn't be there for my kids. So I decided to get over it. I wouldn't divorce her. She said she was sorry and didn't want a divorce either. She was from a single-parent family and didn't want to put our children through that ordeal. We went to counseling. It helped a little. I went to counseling, but other than giving my opinion, it was pointless. 3 years later, we went to counseling again because our marriage wasn't what it used to be. Not a hell of a lot, of course not. I still had trust issues. Her job didn't help with that. I was a chemist at Pfizer, and she was a sales rep, also at Pfizer. She was on the road most of the time and also attended conventions. In my opinion, she had every opportunity to deceive me. How did I know she wasn't? Obviously, our marriage was never the same. I had decided in advance that the day we took Ashley to college, I would start divorce proceedings. Now, 8 years after that fateful day, we were driving home after dropping off our daughter. Today was the day. Today was the day I had to make a phone call to talk to my lawyer. She said, "Honey, we need to talk." She had no idea that I had decided we needed to talk 8 years ago. Now that the kids were gone, there was no reason to continue this deception. I thought about that day many times. "Selma," I said, "I'm filing for divorce." I looked at Selma. She was still good-looking, but the age lines were beginning to show that she was 45. "Kurt," she said hesitantly, "I'm filing for divorce." What the fuck? I thought, she's stealing my thunder. I should be the first one to drop the bomb on her. Now she's telling me she's filing for divorce? I regrouped. "Act cool," I said to myself. "Okay," I said out loud, unemotional. There was disappointment written all over her face. I don't think she expected this reaction from me. At least, I surprised her in some way. What? Did she think I would beg her? That we could work it out? That I would try harder, go to counseling more often? That after more than 20 years of marriage, I wouldn't want to give up? She looked at me. She could see by the look on my face that I felt the same way. That this marriage had died 8 years ago. It just hasn't been declared dead yet. Then she said, "I've been offered a sales manager position at Bristol-Myers Squibb in Atlanta. I will be moving there in about 6 weeks. So she's been planning that for a while, too. I probably could have seen this coming. The last 8 years have not been perfect by any means. It took me almost 9 months to get to the point where I could have sex with her." And that's what it was. Sex. The emotional love connection we once shared was all but gone. I know it was all because of me, but she was the cause of it. The woman I loved unconditionally broke my trust. How could she do this to our family? She did this to our family. It wasn't just done to me. It forever changed the way our family would look at life and relationships. On that fateful night, Selma never came home. I never asked her where she was staying or with whom. I have to believe that unless she was feeling extremely guilty, she was staying at the Doubletree Hotel. Why not? The room was already paid for. I know from talking to Sheila that Jim came home acting as if nothing had happened. He said he tripped going up the stairs and hit his nose on one of the steps. He also had 2 black eyes from the impact. She said to him, "Grab your shit and get the hell out." He tried to deny everything, saying, "Nothing happened." Sheila knew better. When he tried to fight the postnuptial agreement, I told Sheila to subpoena Selma to testify that they had indeed had sex repeatedly. Selma tried to deny it too at first, but I told her that if she thought I was so stupid, we would divorce right away. She didn't want to do that to Ashley and Jason. She wanted them to grow up in a family with both parents. I told her, "You either plead guilty in front of a judge or we have no chance of reconciliation." Jim was furious that Selma had turned her back on him, but I told him, "A man admits his mistakes. Are you a man, Jim, or are you a piece of shit, you sneaky bastard?" Needless to say, we haven't spoken to each other since. He actually moved to Des Moines, moving with his job. So, he wasn't even a part-time dad, he was an absentee dad. He hardly ever visited his kids. Our kids knew something was wrong, but they adjusted to the new normal. I wasn't physically or verbally abusive to their mother. I just didn't show her my love like I had done before. Kurt, if I thought we still had a chance, I would have stayed and tried to make it work. Now that the kids are gone, it's just you and me, and you don't love me the way you used to. That would be the right thing to do, Selma said. I understand, I said. It was true, but how could a husband love his wife like he used to if she didn't love him enough to reject another man's advances? Through the counseling and discussions we had afterward, I had a pretty good picture of what had happened. First of all, they were our friends, so spending time with them was natural. Getting to know them and building rapport with them was also natural. So when Jim came over to my place one day when I wasn't home, it wasn't a big deal to sit and talk. Then, as they were finishing their conversation, Jim asked Selma, "Are you hungry? Would you like to join me at a nice steakhouse and saloon? It's a restaurant in the Doubletree Hotel." That's where I caught them. She agreed, and after half a dozen lunch meetings, because Selma's schedule was flexible, he finally talked her into getting a room. She told me it was a forbidden high. It was the first time, but once Pandora's box was opened, and I didn't notice her guilt that night, it was easier to justify the occasional afternoon delight. "It never took anything away from you," she said. "It was just harmless fun." Well, that harmless fun lasted about 3 months, and they got away with it until I caught them. Even now, I don't think she realizes how much that betrayal hurt me, to love someone and openly trust them, only to have that trust tainted by some harmless fun that changes a person. That's probably why I never reaffirmed my commitment to our marriage. Why commit to someone who doesn't see a problem with their behavior? She probably decided that the only real one was the one who had a problem. As we drove down the highway, it was quiet. Then I said, "At least our kids didn't grow up in a single-parent family." "Yeah, I'm glad about that," she said. "Stability in adolescence is important, and they are better adjusted to life. I would do anything for my kids." Then my first thought was to divorce her and move on with my life. We could each find someone else we could commit to, someone to love and share everything with, someone we could trust. It all came back to trust. Our children saw that no matter what, they could be assured that when they were home each day, we would be there together. Stability in a sometimes unstable world, especially during the tumultuous years of puberty. I was glad I decided to endure for their sake. The Henderson children had been through some rebellious times. Since Sheila was a single mom and they had an absent father, they had a difficult time. I kept in touch with Sheila. We talked on the phone about once a month or so. Since Jim left, I told her that if she needed anything fixed at home, I would see if I could save her some money. If I couldn't, I would share with her my thoughts on whether to repair or replace. She seemed to value my opinion. I enjoyed seeing her children, too. Our children were the driving force behind our family's friendships. They were in the same grades, so even though they lived in a different neighborhood, there were many activities where we saw them. I wish we had never started seeing them socially. Then Selma and I wouldn't have been in this situation. However, was it because of Jim, or would it have been someone else? I would like to believe it was Jim, which would at least allow me to have a little faith in the woman I love. I say love, not loved, because I still love her, just not as much as I used to. It's weird how you define or set parameters for that. There are so many types of love, probably as many as there are different relationships. However, unconditional love is something I've been thinking about a lot lately. Does such a thing even exist? You could say that you love someone unconditionally, like your children, but if they started disrespecting you or, heaven forbid, started physically or verbally abusing you and being actively negative towards you every time you interacted with them, would you still love them? What if they told you, "We never want anything to do with you again," and cut you out of their life? Would you still love them unconditionally? Thankfully, that's not something I have to agonize over. My relationship with my children is very strong. As if reading my thoughts, Selma said, "I'm glad we have good children who love us. They have grown into fine adults and will be wonderful parents, and we will be grandparents someday." That's so true, I said. They really did. They showed respect for each of us and for those around us. They are well-adjusted, and I had no fears for their future. They would blend right into society, taking an active part in making our world a better place to live. As I mentioned earlier, Sheila's children have been through some rebellious times. However, now they seem to be coming around. I am praying for them. As I thought about praying for them, I began to think about my faith. I have never been a very religious person, but when Selma cheated on me, I began to pray to God. First, I prayed for understanding, then I prayed to make the right decision. Since then, I have been praying for strength to get through this. I know I should probably pray for the ability to forgive Selma, but I haven't seen any real repentance on Selma's part, so I couldn't make that leap. Maybe someday. Maybe it will be easier to forgive her when we no longer have to see each other every day. People say, separation makes the heart more loving. Maybe separation will make the heart more reconciled. I asked Sheila how she felt about it. She still has a lot of resentment towards her ex because of the few times it happened. She told me, "There are days when I don't think about him at all. That's probably the closest I've come to forgiveness. It doesn't get there, I know that. But fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 3 times, I'm just stupid." I wasn't fooled 3 times, but I was fooled for 3 months. It makes a guy question his powers of observation. This is probably another reason I had a hard time trusting Selma after she cheated on me. If she did it again, what would I do? How was I supposed to know? That's why as I sit here, heading home, I'm contemplating how to trust not only Selma again, but any woman that might come along in the future. Once bitten, twice shy, so the saying goes. I know myself, and that expression will definitely be a part of my personality in the future. Just another piece of my baggage that I will probably carry with me for the rest of my life. "No, we'll have to decide what to do with the house and everything in it," Selma said. "They'll put me in a furnished apartment for 6 months until I get settled, so I won't need any furniture. Although I might need some when I get my own place." Some furniture. The whole house was filled with things she just had to have. She could take it all out, I don't care. It would just be a reminder of her after she was gone. I didn't want that. What I wanted was to forget her. If I could forget her, I could forget what she did. We never forget, do we? I thought to myself. She will always be there, somewhere in the back of my mind. "You can have it all. I don't want any of it," I said rather sharply. It was the first real emotion I had expressed on the whole trip. "You don't want any of it?" she asked in a surprised tone. "No. I'm starting over with a clean slate, a new canvas to paint a different picture," I told her. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the sadness on her face. "Do you hate me that much?" she asked. No, I still love you. I will always love you in some way, but this chapter of my life is almost over. Time to start a new one, I declared. What about the kids? She asked. Oh, they will be there. In fact, they will be an important part of the new chapter, hopefully soon having children of their own. I intend to spoil my grandchildren through and through, I stated. It would be great to have grandchildren. I can't wait. First, though, they both need to finish college and find their true love, she said. True love, I thought to myself. Does such a thing exist? Do we have soulmates? I thought Selma was my true love and my soulmate for life. Turns out she'd only been that way for about 15 years. Maybe she never was. Perhaps it was all a pipe dream. All of it turned to smoke in a matter of seconds, 8 years ago. We drove on in silence. After about 15 minutes, she said, I'm sorry. For what? I asked. For everything, she replied. For everything. How could anyone be sorry for everything? Did she regret that we had even met? Did she regret that we had started dating? Did she regret that we fell in love? Did she regret that we got married? What about the kids? Did she regret that we had them? Did she regret having an affair or that I caught her? Did she regret that I just didn't accept it and let things get back to normal? Or did she regret divorcing me? I certainly don't regret it. I just wish she hadn't gotten ahead of me in the stroke. She was quietly crying. Why was she crying? She's the one who made the decision to get a divorce. So did I, but she didn't know that. I think she was crying because I took it so nonchalantly, like I didn't care. I cared. I cared a lot. I cared a lot that I had spent 8 years of my life waiting for my children to leave home. I cared a lot that I went wah-wah with a woman who couldn't stay faithful to me. I cared deeply that all my life plans were ruined because she had to have a little harmless fun. I let her cry. I didn't say anything. I drove on in silence. It was a soothing silence for me. She didn't know what else to say, and I didn't want to tell her anything else except maybe, I hope someday you realize what you gave up just so you could have harmless fun. We arrived home and went into the house. She stayed downstairs while I went up to the master bedroom and started moving my clothes into Ashley's bedroom. Ashley had pretty much taken all of her stuff so she could have it in her dorm room. This room would suffice until Selma moved out, and then I would go back to the master bedroom. We'd put the house on the market, but in today's market, we'd be lucky to sell it, God forbid, within 6 months. We took out a home equity loan last year before the real estate market crashed, so we'll be lucky to get what we owe on it. At least the kids' education was financed, at least for the next couple years. Selma was in the kitchen, and I suspect cooking dinner. I had almost finished moving all my stuff when she came upstairs. What are you doing? She asked suppressedly. She could see exactly what I was doing. I'm moving my stuff into Ashley's room, I said, as if nothing had happened. She looked at me and then asked a stupid question. Why? I turned away to put the last of my socks in the dresser and just looked at her. You didn't have to do that, she stated. We could have spent the next 6 weeks in the same bed. That would be best, I said, without any emotion in my voice. Nothing would have to change, she said. We could still act like a normal married couple. For the last 8 years, we hadn't been a normal married couple. Sure, there were times when we laughed, had fun, did the things every married couple does. There were even good times during those years. There were times when I didn't even think about her betrayal, but whenever we started doing anything physical and sexual, the memories always came flooding back. Our lovemaking was good, but it was never great afterward. In the back of my mind, I was always holding back. I'm sure she felt it too. Selma, I said, you'll be gone in 6 weeks, but the truth is, you left me 8 years ago. I know it was painful. I could see it in her face. If she had any doubts about her decision to divorce, they were gone now. She knew I had no reservations. It was the right decision for both of us. She hesitated, turned around, and then said, Dinner will be ready in about 15 minutes. The next 6 weeks were filled with packing. We talked to a realtor about selling the house. He said that in the current market, it could take up to 6 months or longer to sell. I would stay until the house sold. Breaking the news to the kids was something we did together. We went to each of their colleges and took each one to a nice restaurant. Jason took it the hardest. We all had wet eyes as we discussed divorce. It would be amicable. Although we still love each other, we are estranged, we told him. He would find out the truth a couple months later when he asked me why we were divorcing. I couldn't lie to him, so I told him everything. Ashley's reaction surprised us both. We sat down and started eating. She could tell something was wrong. We asked Jason not to tell her anything, but I'm sure he mentioned something that put her in this mood. Selma said, "Honey, we need to talk." She replied, "Yes, I think we should." There wasn't much emotion in her voice. "Honey, that's not easy to say." She hesitated, then said, "Your father and I are getting a divorce." After a second or so, she said, "Good. I had a flashback from 8 years ago. My daughter was more like me than I realized." She handled the situation stoically, with absolutely no emotion. This attitude made Selma stutter as she tried to comfort Ashley. Ashley said, "I understand, Mom. I'm not a little girl anymore. I can deal with this. I thought we shielded our children from our problems 8 years ago." These comments of hers made me think that no matter how hard we tried to hide it, she knew. Perhaps she overheard our argument and kept it to herself all this time. I felt sorry for her. She shouldn't have had to worry at such a young age about the problems we were having. The rest of the meal passed in a somber mood. She really seemed to be okay with it all. We were the ones who had a hard time dealing with our daughter's reaction. The day came when Selma left for Atlanta. We hardly said anything at all. She said to me, "I still love you." I told her, I wish you success in your work and in your life." Then she said, "If you need anything, let me know." Selma, we will see each other at special family moments, graduations, weddings, and the birth of our grandchildren. Let's be cordial and pleasant to each other. Of course we will, Kurt, and we will both spoil the grandchildren as we always planned. I smiled and said, "I know we will." She smiled at that, too. It was a little surreal wandering around the empty house that night. She took pictures, trinkets, and a few pieces of furniture, as well as her clothes and jewelry. It made the house seem more empty than it actually was. However, to be fair, 8 years ago she had taken some things out of the house that made it seem emptier then, too. Weeks turned into months, and finally the divorce was finalized. No fanfare, just a letter in the mail saying I was now a single man. I didn't celebrate as much as I could. I felt like I had somehow failed. I didn't hear from Selma, but I'm sure she received the same notice. There was probably nothing special about it. I'm sure she had already moved on and started dating again. I, however, took my time. Ashley called me like that the following week. I think Selma must have called her. Ashley wanted to sit down and talk to me. I told her, "Sure, honey, can you come home this weekend? Then we can talk." "Yes, Daddy. I'll be home Friday night." As we sat down for our conversation, she said something to me that made me sad for my daughter. "Dad, I knew something was wrong over 8 years ago. I overheard you and Mom arguing. I didn't realize it at the time. You accused her of cheating. Even before that, I knew cheating was wrong. I just couldn't understand why it was such a big deal. I didn't realize it until a few years later. You were screaming about your mom cheating on you with another man. I also heard that you wouldn't divorce for Jason and me. We discussed everything that had happened. She understood what I had done and why. She told me that she never told Jason. She knew Jason couldn't handle it. He idolized his mom. My daughter was an amazing person. She would have been a great mom. 3 years later, I finally met the woman who completely changed my life. I was 48 years old and a little hesitant about whether to get involved with someone. I met a 40-year-old woman named Jackie. She was a divorced woman with 2 children, actually already grown, 18 and 20 years old, a girl and a boy, respectively. 6 years ago, she decided not to wait for the kids to grow up and divorced her unfaithful husband. When we first started dating, having been set up on a blind date, we both still had trust issues. I didn't want to waste her time, so on the first date, I told her all about my past failure and told her, "I have trust issues because of it." She looked at me with tears in her eyes and said she understood completely. We moved slowly, trying to keep ourselves safe but also trying to open up to each other little by little. After 6 months, we finally trusted each other enough to take our relationship to the next level. To say I was nervous would be an understatement. She was the first woman I had been with, besides my wife, in over 25 years. We clumsily made our way through it, laughing at the awkwardness of different situations from time to time. However, we finally found our rhythm and spent several enjoyable hours exploring each other's bodies and what each of us liked and disliked. Our relationship developed, and her children, Arent and Julie, seemed to accept me and even liked me. My kids got to know her and her kids, and they liked them too. Our kids even started going out to play together and seemed to get along. I couldn't have been happier. After 2 years of dating, we got married. It was a small ceremony, but it was a joyful one. Jackie and I spent a week in Hawaii enjoying the sights and each other. It is now 2022, and I am sitting here thinking about my life. Jackie and I just welcomed the birth of our third grandchild. Her son Arent got married 3 years ago and had children almost immediately. Not to mention her daughter Julie got married 18 months ago and has already had a baby too. This got me thinking about my own children, Jason and Ashley. Jason had 3 serious relationships, but when women started pressuring him for commitment, he couldn't handle it. Each of them broke up with him, looking for someone she could spend the rest of her life with. Ashley had gotten married 4 years ago, but was adamant that she would not have children. Her husband didn't feel the need to change that. He liked their freedom. So, I am spoiling my grandchildren from my second marriage. I don't know if I will ever have grandchildren from my own children. After talking to Jason and Ashley, I'm a little doubtful about it. I don't see Ashley changing her mind, and I think Jason will remain a bachelor for life. Selma never remarried, opting instead to date, though, as her boyfriends get older and older as she goes on. She continues to pester Jason and Ashley about the grandchildren. I think she will continue to be frustrated, both with the expectation of grandchildren and her single life. I ran into Sheila last week. She told me that she has been a grandmother 5 times now. Her children have both been married and have led wonderful lives. It seems that after their tumultuous teenage years, they have settled down, gotten degrees, good jobs, and found their soulmates. Hearing this made me wonder, did I do the right thing by my children? Did 8 years of marriage just for the kids cause irreparable damage to their psyche? Is that why one can't make a commitment and the other doesn't want to bring children into this world? I just don't know, but one thing keeps coming back to me. It's what Sheila said on that fateful day. I said, at this point, I need to start thinking about my children and what's best for them. She replied, and, Kurt, don't forget to take into consideration what's best for you. I wonder how my life and my children's lives would have changed if I had followed that advice. Not much in my past worth mentioning. An average man with average desires, a loving wife, a good job, children. My lovely wife Helen had similar interests, at least I thought so. My story is about how I found out that my wife and I didn't have as many interests in common as I thought. It started one dark and stormy night. No, it didn't. It's just the way I've always wanted to start a story. It started one night when I came home from work. My wife Helen was sitting on the couch in the living room watching TV. She turned it off when I walked in. I sniffed around and didn't smell any food. What's the matter? Do you want to go out tonight? Did you ask Kelsey? Kelsey's at your mom's right now. I wanted to talk to you without interrupting. There was a sexy note in her voice, and I thought I was about to get lucky. Helen continued. I know I shouldn't talk about role-playing, but I just want you to know how much I enjoy it. I want us to take what we do on Wednesdays into our bedroom on a regular basis. What do you say, cowboy? I didn't know what to say except, what's with the role-playing? Oh, I know you want to pretend you're keeping it a secret to heighten the excitement, but you've spoiled me. I want more than once a week for our special lovemaking. I'm overcome with a feeling of intense fear. Helen, I don't know anything about Wednesday night role-playing. Please explain to me what you're talking about. Helen was starting to look shocked, too. You know, Wednesdays at the Marcus Inn and Suites. Doesn't that mean anything to you? I shook my head negatively. Oh my God. You emailed me about 6 weeks ago that you'd found a way to revitalize our sex life. I should go to room 301 at the Marquis Hotel. I had to undress, put on the mask lying on the night table, and lie naked on the bed. I didn't move, even when you came in and tied me to the bed. After you made love to me, you would untie me and leave. I wasn't supposed to take off my mask until you left. We were supposed to pretend we were having an affair and keep secrets from each other. It was supposed to make sex so much more enjoyable for us. You said we couldn't talk about it for a week. I couldn't believe how wonderful it was. We were having sex differently than we ever had before. Oh, Cal, please tell me it was you. Tears came to her eyes. I'm so sorry, Helen. I've never been to the Marquis with you or anyone else. Are you telling me that I've had sex with someone other than my husband 6 times? She ran to the bathroom and threw up. After cleaning herself up, she went back into the living room where I sat in complete shock. Cal, you have to forgive me. Honestly, I thought it was you. I was so happy. Now I feel like an idiot. Someone tricked me. Hell, that's why he never talked to me in the room. He wanted me to keep thinking it was you. Oh, Cal, please tell me you forgive me. I don't know what to say. It just seems so strange. How could someone do this to us and why? How could you be with him 6 times and not realize it wasn't me? I thought it was you. You did things differently, but that was part of the role play. Doing something different, sexier, more dodgy than before. I think he's just hotter than you. Well, maybe you need to find out who this guy is who is so much better in bed than me so you can be his wife. I was getting angry. You don't have to treat me like that. I want to find this guy. I want to cut his balls off for raping me. Do you realize he basically raped me? I've calmed down. I'm sorry, Helen. I didn't see it from your point of view enough. Let's try to look at it logically, if we can. Who would want to do something like this for us? It would have to be someone who really hates me, you or both of us. Or it could be someone who was secretly in love with you and figured out a way to have sex without convincing you to cheat on your husband. Helen's whole body trembled. I get goosebumps at the thought that there might be someone out there somewhere who thinks about having sex with me every night. You mean besides me, of course. My attempt to lighten the mood turned into a major disaster. Asshole, you weren't raped. I'm sorry, okay. Where did the letter come from? Too bad I don't save emails. Whoever sent them told me to delete the messages. They were emailed from your office. So, it must be someone who has access to my computer. I usually leave it on when I leave my desk for only a short time. Trouble is, it gives us dozens of opportunities. Does he keep emailing you? Yes. He usually confirms our meeting before each time, hinting at what I can expect. He said he wanted the anticipation to make me melt. I had to delete that email and not respond. Now I understand why. Really? Are you getting excited? Yeah, but remember, I thought I was going to have sex with you. Damn it, Cal. In my mind, I wasn't enjoying sex with another man. I was enjoying sex with you. Did he email you about the upcoming meeting on Wednesday? No, not yet. I'll email him. I guess you don't have to email him. He gave me a phone number to leave a message if I ever had to cancel. I had to leave a message on it once. Okay. Don't do anything for now. Let me know when he texts again. There was no sex at the Turner house that night or the next. I didn't dare dip my wick where someone else had just been. Helen said she was afraid she would start imagining sex she had with another guy, which would make her feel like she was cheating on me, thus ruining the moment. We both agreed that we needed to get tested for STDs. On Monday, Helen received an email from a mystery lover. She showed me the text when I got home from work. He confirmed that this Wednesday was good for him. He was going to convince her to finally give him her ass. Helen confided in me that she considered the possibility of anal sex as part of a new role-playing activity. Until recently, she had considered anal sex to be a step too far. I told her to call him and leave a message that he could have what he wanted. I wanted to make sure he would show up. Tuesday afternoon, I went to the Marquis and talked to the desk clerk. I asked if he would be on duty the next day. He confirmed that he would. I asked him what it would take to enter the room my wife was coming to tomorrow. He was not surprised, as it was obvious to him that the woman and man who used the same room each week were not married. He replied, $200. Wednesday came and we were ready to catch the man. Helen entered the room and did the usual. A few minutes later, I saw a man enter the room. It was Richie Hammond, the psycho from our office. He molested every woman in the office, married or not. Of course, he was married and had 2 children. Betraying his family apparently wasn't considered an obstacle to him. He looked at the picture of my wife on my desk and mentioned several times how lucky I was to have such a sexy wife. I always wanted to spray Lysol after every time he appeared in my office. I went to the desk clerk to get a copy of my room key. He wouldn't let me take it. Man, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job. The boss pounced on all the porters not to let anyone in except the one who was paying. Afternoon pleasures is a big part of our business. I'm sorry, man. I was out of my mind. I thought about what might be going on in the room. Helen was expected to be on her usual behavior, and I would barge in before anything could happen. I became frantic. If you don't give me the key, I'll kick down the door and call the police. Do you think your boss wants to deal with that? I had the key, but it was a few minutes after I was supposed to enter the room. When I walked in, Richie was standing behind me and had my wife. I grabbed him by the hair and pulled him away. Helen seemed disappointed until I untied her and removed the mask. Then she started crying. I told her to get dressed. Richie sat down in one of the chairs. Surprisingly, he looked completely relaxed. Well, at least I got to pat her beautiful ass before you did. I approached him with fire in my eyes. He just pointed to the corner. There was a camera mounted on a tripod. Cal, you don't want to hurt me. I have videotapes of all the sessions your wife and I have had. Do you really want me to publish them? I think I can get a pretty penny for them from some porn sites. Sure, I can send them to friends and family for free, or we could just leave it at that. I take it once a week, you take it every other day. You son of a bitch. Give me the video, and you'll never see my wife again. Or what? Or I'll be... Can't think of anything that doesn't humiliate you or brand your wife a whore, can you? I'll kill you. Richie was already laughing. You'd leave your wife and daughter without a husband and father, without a livelihood? Yes, of course. Well, I'm a little tired of her now that I got her ass. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm never going to make contact with her again. Of course, if she wants to call me, then that's another matter. A wide, wide smile appeared on his face. Helen got dressed and we left. On the way home, she was silent. She ran into the house, went upstairs, and took a long, long shower. I waited downstairs. Once downstairs, she suggested we talk after dinner. Now it was time to pick up Kelsey. Dinner was quiet except for Kelsey's story about the day before. She went to bed at 8 o'clock. We walked over to the kitchen table around 8:30 to make sure our daughter was asleep. What are we going to do now? Helen asked. I'm not quite sure. If there was some way to get video, it would solve a lot of our problems. At the moment, I can't see any way other than burglary. But who can we get to do that? If we go to the police, he'll just say you agreed to it. He has videos that will show that you enjoyed it. Even if he's arrested, the videos will be made public. We're screwed. Do you have any ideas? No, I think we're out of line. I guess we could try to put it all in the rearview mirror and go on with our lives. Are you okay? No revenge? I'm afraid anything we do will only make things worse. Let's let it go. If we never talk about it again, it will eventually recede. She left and went to bed. As usual lately, I didn't join her. It had been 2 months now. Helen was pleasant and did all her usual household and childcare duties. We usually didn't talk about anything in the house except for things related to Kelsey, appointments, or phone messages. Our sex life was self-maintained. At the office, I tried to avoid Richie. Whenever he cast a glance at me, he had the smirk of a man who'd given me horns. Just another twist of the knife in my back. God, I wanted to wipe that smirk off with my fist. I never stopped thinking about how to get back at him, and I never gave up on my goal. In the midst of one of my revenge dreams, I got a phone call. It was the desk clerk at the Marquee. "What do you want?" "Hey, kid, don't be mad at me. I got some information that might be useful to you. You interested?" "I have no idea. What could there be that would interest me right now?" "What about the fact that your wife and that Richie guy are up to their old tricks?" I tried to sound nonchalant, even though I was seething inside. "I find that hard to believe. She hates him. And why would he go back to the Marquis if he was caught there?" "I'm not at Marquis anymore. I work at the Red Roof on Kingston Road now. When I saw them, I asked the porter I was replacing about them. He said they had been coming regularly for about a month now. Every Wednesday at the same time. If proof is needed, I can get it for, say, $500. Screw you both, you and my wife." I hung up the phone. I wanted to cry, but I was too angry. Richie said he would continue if my wife called him. I remembered her comments about how much he enjoyed having sex with him. We'd never gone so long without sex before, and Helen didn't seem to feel left out. Probably because it wasn't happening. The only thing I could do was leave. I grabbed the things I usually took with me on a 3-day business trip. I headed to the nearest motel, which wasn't the Marquee or the Red Roof, and it had a bar. I checked into the Holiday Inn Express and headed to the bar. I didn't drink much, so I asked the bartender for something to offer. He treated me to a cocktail from Long Island. At first it seemed too weak, but by the second round my opinion had changed. There was a hell of a late rumble. I was well on my way to drowning in my sorrows when I got a pat on the shoulder. "Can I join you, Cal? I need to cry into my beer, too." I saw a tall woman with long, wavy, coal-black hair. She was gorgeous. I said, "Excuse me, do I know you?" "Joan, Richie's wife, at least for now. We met at last year's Christmas party." I looked again. How could I have forgotten such a beautiful woman? Had I really just said that out loud? Joan laughed. "Thank you. I think you meant it as a compliment. Why do you... Are you always this eloquent? Let me explain. Today I found out about Richie's latest escapade with your wife. I paid the desk clerk who called me $500 for proof. I'm done. He's promised several times to stop being promiscuous, but I don't think that's possible. As for meeting you, it was just a coincidence. I wanted to get out of the house and clear my head. My mother has 2 of my children. When I saw you and remembered you from the Christmas party, the look on your face seemed to match what I was feeling, so I walked over. If you'd rather be alone... No, please join me. I'm just so surprised. I think we probably have a lot in common. What do you drink? What do you have? A cocktail from Long Island. God damn it, I love it. I lost my virginity to him. Damn it, order me a double. We spent a few hours talking and drinking. She was easy to talk to and had a great, bawdy sense of humor. I was very attracted to that. Finally, she said, "Well, it's time for us to get revenge or go to bed ourselves. Which do you prefer?" "As much as I would like to make love to you, I don't think I can do it well enough to make it worthy of a special woman like you. This is the most pleasant disappointment I've ever experienced. Trust me, it wasn't meant to be an insult, and I definitely hate to miss a chance like this. If we were ever to make love, I would want to be at my best. Even then, I'd worry about whether I was good enough for you. Damn it! I haven't even taken out the trash yet, and I feel like I'm falling in love again. I should have known better than to drink doubles. What if we had breakfast together tomorrow? I could call you, or, if you're up... I have a suggestion," Joan objected. "What if we sleep together so we know when the other one wakes up? You mean sleep together or sleep together?" "Only sleeping together." Bah! I could be talked into exchanging a little affection. I really don't want to sleep alone tonight. Neither do I. Your room or mine? I have a suite. I use his credit card. He owes me. I brought some of my things to her room. After finishing our nightly bathroom duties, we got into bed. Despite the fact that we were both naked, cuddling, and kissing lightly, we fell asleep after only a few minutes. She woke up first and poked me under the ribs. "Wake up." Over breakfast at the neighboring Waffle House, we got serious, talked about our marriages. We both wanted to get rid of our spouses, and we both wanted revenge. The problem seemed to be how we could divorce them without losing as much or more than they did. I really don't want to go back to that house. I'd be happy to just go somewhere with the kids and forget about it. How can you afford it? Won't he come after the kids or come after you? My family has money. When I called them last night, they said they would put $100,000 into my personal account to allow me and the kids to start divorce proceedings elsewhere. Honestly, I would rather just walk away and let him worry about the divorce. Aren't your kids in school? Aren't they going to miss their dad? No, I homeschooled them, and he only agreed to have kids because it was a condition of marrying me. I had my tubes tied after the second one. I doubt they will miss him much. I'm pretty sure he won't. He doesn't spend much time with them and always whines if they ask him to babysit while I run off somewhere. I've known for quite some time he probably only married me for my money. I don't care. I have two wonderful girls from our marriage. My parents have been slow to give me and my brother money, but they have helped us with the deposit on our house and things like that. They're not particularly fond of Richie. I haven't thought about just leaving. Like you, I don't particularly want to go back to my house. Although both our names are on the mortgage, Helen and Kelsey were never particularly close. Kelsey was an oops baby. I think Helen didn't want to put her career on hold for a few years. Kelsey has always been a daddy's girl, and I think Helen loves her, but I don't think she will take extraordinary action to win her back. She knows I'll take good care of her. You know, the more I think about it, the more I like the idea of just leaving. Joan asked me, if it seems like the best option for both of us is to just leave our spouses and not mess around with divorce, the question is, do we do it together? She looked into my eyes, and maybe I was wishful thinking, but I thought I saw love in her eyes. We've been together 24 hours. Not exactly love at first sight, but pretty damn close. It doesn't make sense, but yes, I would go with you if I could take my daughter with me. I can't believe I'm saying this. I've never done anything so impulsive and so important at the same time. I just have one question. Where are we going to go? Will we tell anyone where we're going? Those are the first two questions, but we have to ask each other every question we can think of. Here's my tentative plan. I have an Aunt Barbara who has a big cabin on Lake Champlain that she can no longer live in because of her problems. If it were available, it would be perfect. An isolated cabin with plenty of room for the kids and for us. The furnishings are well worthy of a photo from National Geographic magazine. It turned out that the cabin was vacant. I spent the next few days at the hotel. I ignored messages from Helen after I realized she had guessed that I knew about her returning for dates with Richie on Wednesdays. I left one message. I need to go away for a while. I went to work and quit. My boss was upset, but also understood the reason. He asked if firing Richie would cause any problems in my plans for Helen. My case was not the first. I said, fire him. I asked him to wait until I was ready to leave. I wished I had a picture of Richie's face when he was told, but it was too much. I went into our bank and withdrew almost all the money from our joint assets. I used most of the money to pay off the rest of the mortgage. Despite her betrayal, I couldn't bring myself to take all of our money and assets. We both contributed to the household expenses. Having the house would give Helen roughly the same financial results as a 50-50 divorce. If she needed money, she could always sell the house. I gave up my interest in the house to make it easier for her. I then canceled the automatic payment of utilities and insurance. Health insurance will stop with me leaving my job. I changed the life insurance beneficiary to Kelsey. At night, Joan and I talked about what we needed to do to hide effectively, how to least harm our children, and what kind of future we could have together. We continued to avoid sex. There was enough emotion as it was. We didn't need our decision to leave our spouses to be based on sex between us. I don't know which of us was more disappointed. By the third day, we concluded that our escape plan was feasible. The next day, while Helen was at work, I went over to the house and picked up what I thought Kelsey and I needed most. I wondered if I should leave a note. All I could come up with was, I hope the sex with him was worth it. My last stop for the day was Kelsey's school. I told the school that Kelsey had a doctor's appointment and apologized for not letting them know sooner. I told Kelsey that we were going on vacation. Kelsey asked if Mom was going. I said not on this trip. I was surprised by her calm response. Joan picked up the kids from Mom's house when they got home from school. By 5 o'clock, we were on our way. Aunt Barb invited us to stay at the lake house. She had just finished renovating it and had qualms about selling it. Lucky for us. We took 2 cars. Kelsey rode with me at first, but after a few stops where the 3 girls got to know each other, they took turns all riding with me or all riding with Joan. By the time we got to the log cabin, Joan and I had lost the master bedroom. The girls wouldn't agree to share the newly minted trio. Fortunately, one of the guest bedrooms was next to the second bathroom and was quite accommodating for Joan and me. One of Joan's daughters asked why Joan and I were sharing a bedroom when there was no one in one of the bedrooms. Joan told her that the bedroom we were in was an adult bedroom. Her oldest daughter replied that adults usually have their own room. Kelsey agreed. Both could see that their parents hadn't spent many nights together over the past few months. Once the excitement of the day passed, the kids headed to bed, all 3 in the same bed. Good thing it was queen-sized. Joan and I each had a glass of wine. Barbara had made us a small wine cabinet for the housewarming party. A sly smile appeared on Joan's face. So now that we're separated from our spouses, are you ready to prove how good you are in bed? Oh, hell, she remembered what I'd said that night at the Holiday Inn Express. I'm afraid I overestimated your expectations of my skills in the bedroom. My ex-wife seemed disappointed in that regard. If she fell in love with my worthless ex-husband, I don't give a damn about her judgment in the sexual arena or anywhere else. Besides, I plan to influence the quality of your performance as much as possible. I hope you don't mind a woman on top? My erection quickly responded in the affirmative to her statement. We headed for the adult bedroom and made love. I was pleasantly surprised at how different it was to love Joan than with Helen. It was a nice difference. She smelled different, and I felt different. Everything tasted different. I really thought she might be having a seizure until she said, "Can you do that again?" Surprisingly, I could. 4 times. I got up 4 times that night. A new record for me. That's it, Joan remarked before we finally fell asleep. I guess that answers the question of sexual compatibility. We snuggled up to each other. The next morning, we enjoyed shopping to stock up on food for us and the kids. I enjoyed grilling for as long as the weather allowed. We didn't need any money, as Joan was still getting most of her money from her parents, plus what little I had left after paying the mortgage. No one but Aunt Barb knew where we were. Once she heard our stories, she had no problem wanting to keep our secret, even from Joan's parents. Time passed, and Joan became the home teacher for all 3 children. I got a job as a handyman. Admittedly, I was learning as I went along. The girls' questions about my wife and her husband, or if they wanted to see them, became less and less frequent each month. Soon all the girls were calling us Mommy and Daddy. Living outdoors allowed them to unleash their inner souls. Our closest neighbor, Greta, raised her family in this environment and was happy to give us advice. We needed it. She started out as a friend, but gradually became a grandmother to our children. We asked her not to ask the children about their parents, as we were both going through a nasty divorce. She agreed. From time to time, Joan and I talked about whether to make contact with our former lives. We were afraid that any contact might lead someone to us. Besides Helen and Richie, We worried that the police might accuse us of kidnapping and/or fraud to avoid a legal divorce and distribution of funds. We decided to use the internet as a safer way to communicate. Greta agreed to install the internet in her home if we would teach her how to use it. She wanted to write to her grandchildren. With our kids, she missed hers even more than before. We debated whether to tell Greta our true story. So far, we hadn't done so. Things were going so well that we were afraid to rock the boat. It took Greta a month to install satellite TV with Wi-Fi. We showed her how to use email and Skype. Seeing her grandchildren live was something special to her. One day when she was taking the girls to the lake, we went online for information. We found an ad for my old house for sale. Helen must have needed the money. A year after we left, Helen and Richie sent out divorce notices based on being abandoned. Aunt Barbara told Joan that her parents sent the annual Christmas report for the year. Joan's mother attached a personal note to Barb's letter because she knew that her daughter and Barb were close. Barb suspected that Joan's mother had guessed where Joan was. The message was a warning to Barbara. Helen didn't give up on finding Cal. She hired a private detective who visited Joan's parents. The detective knew about Aunt Barbara. She told her to expect someone to be sniffing around soon. She didn't call because she was afraid her calls might be tapped. Joan's mother watched a lot of spy movies. Barbara advised Cal and Joan to hurry up. We didn't have enough money to make a big move unless we were sure we'd get more money soon after the move. Instead of asking Joan's parents for help, I decided to take a chance and wrote to my old boss to find out where to look for a job. He replied that a private investigator had contacted him. My boss told him that he was pissed that I hadn't warned him, and he didn't care where I was. He then asked me if I liked Flagstaff, Arizona. I said I didn't know because I had never been there. He said there was an opening for a branch manager there. He agreed to set up an interview for me and assured me that I would get the job. I asked how he could guarantee that. He said his brother, who had already tried to hire 2 employees at my old office, was hiring. We headed toward Flagstaff. On the way, I was afraid that by becoming an employee, I would leave a trail that a good private investigator could find. I had an idea just before we entered Arizona. We got a hotel room with a double bed and let the girls swim in the pool. Joan did her best to calm my nerves. As promised my former boss, his brother mainly wanted to know how soon I could get started. I told him that I needed to form an LLC and name my corporation something other than my name. I told him that instead of an employee, he would utilize the services of my corporation. Service contracts were usually cheaper than salaried employees, so he agreed. We found a house in the desert. It was very different outside, but the kids adapted quickly. I think they were glad to get away from the cold winter weather possible where we came from. It took a few months for the kids to adjust, and a few more before Joan and I felt safe again. That fateful night, Joan and I were turning out the lights, about to go to bed when there was a knock on the door. At that hour, with no neighbors nearby, I became suspicious. I took my rifle and loaded it. I cautiously peeked through the peephole and saw that it was Helen. Tons of mixed emotions rushed through my brain. My heart was pounding frantically. My stomach felt queasy. I shouted to Joan that we had guests. I invited Helen in just as Joan entered the room. "I assume this is Helen?" I nodded. Helen immediately jumped up. "I suppose the children are already asleep. I waited until you started turning out the lights. I didn't want to disturb them." "Yes, they've been asleep for about half an hour." "Good. Goddamn, you're just a hard-to-get bastard." She grinned. "Let me put you both at ease right from the start. I'm not here to cause trouble. After you left and Richie lost his job, he moved in with me. It didn't take me long to realize that I traded the Mercedes for a Yugo. Don't get me wrong. I was attracted to him for the sex, and he was good in bed. But a couple that lives together needs more than sex. I gave him a deadline to find a job so he could pay his share of the expenses. He didn't believe me at first, but was convinced when a deputy showed up and told him to get out or be arrested. I heard he found a job in another town. As for my life, I came to my senses with the help of a therapist. Since then, I've been able to support myself emotionally and financially pretty well. Private investigators don't come cheap. After a year, I filed for divorce because by then I knew I had lost you and Kelsey. As much as I wanted to act differently, I knew I had to move on. By filing a quitclaim deed, I could set the terms of the divorce proceedings. I took what little was left of your stuff. Honestly, I feel like I've moved on. I actually have a man I am dating and have high hopes for. At least I'm sure I won't make the mistake I made with you. If you left Helen's ex, why are you here? Not exactly polite for small talk, is it? Okay, the reason I'm here is closure. I got really depressed when I had time alone to realize what I'd done, what I had lost. I couldn't live in balance with myself without telling you how sorry I am and that I don't blame you one bit for what you did. I wanted to make sure you didn't think it was your fault. I pray that you don't hate me. I wish I could ask for your forgiveness, but I realize that's asking too much. Anyway, I apologize again. I hope you and Joan and Kelsey are happy. Well, that's it. Now I have closure. What about Kelsey? Were you planning on seeing her? Are you going to get custody? I'm not going to lie. At first, I was hoping to at least get joint custody. As time went on, I realized that if she was used to her new family, it would do more harm than good for her to see me, much less live with me. As good as she is, I don't think I could handle her on my own without your help. Seeing each other now, we're probably experiencing emotions that will eat us both up for a long time. I want to know how she's doing. Has she ever asked about me or been interested in me? How is she doing in school? None of the girls asked about you or Richie, but we certainly didn't forbid them to, replied Joan. We said that you and Richie don't want to be with us anymore, but want our new family to be happy. So far, they haven't said they want to come back. That doesn't mean they don't periodically ask how you're doing. I feel pretty comfortable telling you that they have all adjusted well. Kelsey and my girls have become an inseparable trio of cute monsters. I homeschool her along with my girls. She tests 2 grades higher than she would be if she were in public school in most subjects. Helen, I can truly say that I love Kelsey as much as I love my 2 birth children. There were tears in Helen's eyes. Thank you. Have you 2 been married yet? I answered. No, we weren't sure we were divorced. That's what I thought. Well, I have a wedding present for you. It's a copy of each of your divorce certificates, suitable for framing. Her attempt at a joke seemed to be all about keeping from crying. Richie and I shared a divorce attorney. Now you can become a legal family if you want. You will notice that both Richie and I have given full custody of our children to the 2 of you. You should be able to apply to adopt each other's children. After pausing to watch Joan and I cry at the good news, Helen said, I have to go, and headed for the door. I reached out and took her hand. Through copious tears, Helen whispered, Just let me go. I promise never to bother you again. If you ever need to let me know anything about Kelsey, you have my cell phone number. I let her go, and she left. Joan went and got us each a glass of wine. We needed to calm our nerves somehow. We sat in silence for a while. I looked at Joan, and after a few minutes I saw her smile. So, who's proposing to who? Now I was smiling. After due consideration and deep thought, I decided that the first one to climax tonight would be the one to propose. We both ran to the bedroom. Epilogue. Helen pulled far enough away so she couldn't be seen. She stopped and let out the sobs she was holding inside. Helen pondered her situation. Her funds had almost run out when the private investigator claimed success. What little funds she had with her were less than $200. Her plan to meet with Cal had 2 options. First, Helen could find that Cal was unable to handle Kelsey without her. Joan either wouldn't be with him or their relationship had soured. Cal will forgive her. She can come back into Cal and Kelsey's life and never leave again. Even if they don't get married, it doesn't matter. Her car was loaded with everything she still had, waiting for that option to materialize. The second option was if she found Cal and Kelsey in good health. Maybe he and Joan would marry and even have a child of their own. In that case, she'd say she'd only come to end the affair and give them the divorce decrees as a parting gift. The second option was the most difficult, but she had to make provision for it. Her closure plan required her to leave her new family and make her way to the biggest city nearby, where she could start her life over without fear of running into them. The zippered bag in the glove compartment held Cal's engagement ring, her wedding bands, and other jewelry she no longer needed. Pawning them would give her money for a new life. Stopping crying, Helen pulled back onto the road. "Phoenix, I'm coming. Hey, maybe this is a sign from God. Maybe I can rise from the ashes too." I sat with my lawyer. "Is this true?" She was looking over the divorce papers. "I was served the papers 2 days ago. It seemed real to me." She shook her head and read with obvious disbelief. "And when did you first find out?" "I came home the day before I was handed the papers. There was a suitcase at the door, and she was sitting at the table waiting for me." "And you knew nothing about it? You just came home and she hit you with that suitcase?" "I went into the apartment, she called me over to the table, and before I could take off my coat, she told me to sit down. Then she said she was leaving me and wanted a divorce." "And then what happened?" "Nothing. She gets up. I say, 'Wait a minute. You can't just spring something like that on me and walk away. Why are you doing this?' "And what did she say to that?" "Nothing. At that moment, I caught some movement in my peripheral vision. I turned around and there's a suit standing in the kitchen doorway." "What did the suit say?" "He never spoke to me. He just looked at my wife and said, 'Are you ready, baby?' She nods. He picks up her suitcase and they walk out the door." "And then what?" "Then nothing. He had a car parked under our apartment." "What kind? Not that it matters." "Something German, I think. I'm not really into expensive cars, but I could tell it looked expensive." She nodded again, as if she'd heard it all before, but continued to flip through the papers. "So what happened?" "Then nothing happened. She left with him, and when I finally gathered my thoughts, I looked around the apartment. Her clothes, jewelry, and makeup were gone. Almost everything else was still there." She was still shaking her head. "Such divorce petitions are not common. She's asking to execute a prenuptial agreement. Essentially, she's admitting she cheated. All she wants is what she brought to the marriage. There is mention of a trust that belongs to her. She wants her car, which she says she bought. You keep your retirement account and whatever's in the bank." "Ha!" snorted I. My lawyer looked up. "Enlighten me." "We've been married for 4 years and 5 years out of college. I work as a teacher. My retirement account is small, and our savings can't match her trust." "How big is her trust?" "Several million, I think, but I've never seen it." "She has $1 million trust, and you don't even know how much is in there?" I paused, searching for words. It wasn't hard to explain, but people didn't seem to understand when I told them. My father was a very successful businessman, but my parents didn't believe in showing it. They thought it was more important to live in society than to use their money to stand out. I had a good life growing up, but it wasn't a life in a mansion, if you know what I mean. We didn't have our own pool, but we went to the public pool on the next street over. We didn't go on exotic vacations to Europe or the Bahamas, but we did go to the beach every summer. My father drove a regular car. He wore a suit to work, but it wasn't Armani. My mom had some nice jewelry, but nothing that would make her a target on the street. They just weren't into that kind of thing. Sounds like they were nice people. They were. They died in a car accident when I was still in college. I miss them to this day. She looked at me for a moment and asked, "So what did you do then?" "I went to live with my cousins. I went on to college and met Diane." "So Diane never met your parents?" "No. But she met your cousins?" Oh, yes. She met her cousins, my aunt and my uncle. I suppose they mostly didn't like her. They never said anything bad about her, but they didn't say anything positive either. My lawyer nodded again. What's her family like? Oh, they have money and they want everyone to know about it. As far as they knew, I didn't have any and they treated me like some trailer trash. What's your wife's maiden name? Parkinson. She looked up with surprise written on her face, but it quickly disappeared, and the professional mask fell back into place. Her father wouldn't happen to be Jeffrey Parkinson, would he? I nodded. Yes, that's him. Business tycoon, captain of industry, man of wealth. Her brain was spinning at a mile a minute. I could practically hear it humming. Does it mention your inheritance? What is it? Well, I don't usually like to talk about it. I was their sole heir when my parents died. I wasn't ready to run my father's business, so I let his lawyer handle the sale of the company, and all the money went into a trust he set up for me. I figure he'll be useful to me when I need him, but for now I'm just a working teacher trying to make a career. Can you tell me how much is in the trust now? About $50 million, I think. And you're a working teacher? Yes, I'd heard that before. I believe the money is for me to do work that gives me a sense of fulfillment. They're not so I can sit on my ass or buy a yacht or anything like that. They just give me the confidence to do things that give me a sense of fulfillment. And teaching brings you satisfaction. It was more of a statement than a question. Yes, I've had some wonderful teachers, so I figured this was one way to repay them. My lawyer leaned back in her chair. She seemed to be sizing me up. Does Diane know how much money is in the trust? I had to wonder. She knows it exists. I don't know if I ever told her the amount. She insisted that we keep our finances separate, and we do separate tax returns every year, so she's had no reason to see the numbers. So, from her point of view, you're a teacher with a small inheritance. Is that correct? I hadn't given it much thought. Now that you've said it, I assume it's true. I recommend you sign it today before she changes her mind. Her words knocked the spirit out of me. Let me be honest with you. The law is about money and little else. There are other considerations when it comes to children, but without children, it's all about money. I know a little about your father-in-law, Mr. Jeffrey Parkinson. He built a house of cards, and all it takes is the slightest breeze to bring it down. My relatives in Texas would say he's all hat and no cattle. As far as I can tell, he's got everything leveraged to the max. The big question is, do you want to pay it back? What an interesting question. I thought about how her family treated me and how she treated me when we were with them. That was the first blow. I always knew she cared too much about money to the point of jealously guarding her trust fund. That was the second blow. Then there was the suit and the way she left with it. That was the third blow. I made my decision and shook my head. No. Then I suggest you sign this agreement right now. I can explore your trust if you really want me to, but as long as she leaves it to you, I suggest that you keep what's yours, let her take what's hers, and get on with your life. I took a deep breath in and exhaled. She was right. I had failed in my marriage, and it was time to face that reality. She called her secretary into the office and asked her to bring the notary's seal. I signed, my lawyer witnessed it, and her secretary notarized it. I will return them to her lawyer today. Her lawyer did a good job. This case is tighter than a mouse's sphincter. She can't come back to you later to take possession of your trust. I must have looked confused, so she explained. Daniel, her life is smoke and mirrors. When her father's empire collapses, her world will change, and not for the better. You need to be away from her when that happens. I've never met your wife, but she seems like the kind of person who uses people, and you don't want her using you. I just nodded. She was right. It was a painful lesson, and I learned it the hard way, but I learned it nonetheless. Visit your cousins. A little distance will help you see things in a new way. She wasn't wrong. Diane left me on the last day of class, and I filed out on the first day of summer vacation. I decided that's what my trust was for, so I used enough of the funds to pay my expenses over the summer and spent time with my in-laws. They needed help on the farm, and I needed a distraction. In every sense, it was homecoming time, and it was during that summer that I finally realized my life. I now realized that all the pieces fit together except for one, my soon-to-be ex-wife. I had always been just an add-on to her real life, and now I was free to rearrange my life the way I wanted. I returned to the city a week before the new school year started and found my apartment stuffy and my divorce finalized. I had no idea what Diane was doing, and I didn't care. A year and a half passed when I learned that Diane's father's business had collapsed. The economy went down and the income went down with it. It was a surprisingly small blip in the overall economy, but apparently what I was told was true. The banks took out a loan and he didn't have the money to pay it back. This led to a domino effect of one loan after another demanding repayment until he sold his company. He kept his home and most of the trappings he cherished, but everything new and it almost killed him. Most of his employees kept their jobs, although there were layoffs in management. Suit was one of them. Very unfortunate, very sad. The only thing my lawyer was wrong about was that Diane never came back looking for a second bite at the apple. In my mind, I imagined her father trying to clean up her trust fund to bolster his business, but as nasty as they were, I doubt even he would stoop to that. I suppose she never realized that my own trust was worth anything, and I wasn't inclined to tell her that. Whenever I think of Diane and our marriage, which is not often, I wonder what our lives would have been like if she and her family hadn't treated me and my family so condescendingly. She never realized that life is not about money, but that the purpose of money is to help us live our lives more fully. She was so concerned with keeping what she had and hiding it from me that she never appreciated all that I had to offer. Well, as they say, water under the bridge. Life goes on, and for me at least, it's a good one. Linda was waiting for a cab. On Sunday, she went with Mark to his training session. She had arranged to take a cab home from the stadium, and she had hidden Mark's phone number in the memory of her phone. While she waited, her thoughts went back to Friday night when Mark picked her up. She couldn't believe that Mark Lavaliere had walked up and asked her to dance. She was over the moon when they danced, and even more so when he offered to take her home with him for the night. She instantly decided to accept, and Dee helped her get away from Jim with no problem. Her thoughts turned to Jim, her husband, and she felt remorse. She knew he would be upset that she had left him like this, but she knew he would forgive her. He had always given her everything she wanted, and this occasion was no exception. She knew it would hurt him, but in the end it was what she wanted, and that was all that mattered to Jim. When she got home, she would have to explain that this was a once-in-a-lifetime chance, and she had to take it. It was Mark Lavaliere. Mark drove her to his mansion, and throughout the ride his hands worked their way up her legs, slowly teasing her sex but not touching it. When they reached his house, he pulled her to him, and the first kiss was so soft, almost tentative. His tongue explored her mouth and his hands unzipped the zipper on her dress. Stepping back, he watched the straps of the dress slide down her shoulders. It fell to the floor, followed by her bra. His hands began caressing her body and exploring all the places the dress covered. Exploding, she began unbuttoning his pants and finally saw her prize. Oh, she was going to really enjoy this. "Excuse me, miss. Did you call a cab?" "What? Oh, yes. Sorry, got carried away." She got into the cab and gave the driver the address she needed to go to. "So, are you a fan? Do you think they have any chance this year? With Mark on the team, I expected a better performance last season. Who takes off work because of a sore pinky toe? I had to work when I almost fell ill and he got time off for a little finger injury. Well, I guess that's the way it is." The driver continued almost non-stop to her house. The 30-minute drive was filled with his chatter and her daydreaming about the weekend she had just spent. Mark had taken her several times on Friday night, and then all day Saturday. The cab pulled up to her driveway and she was surprised not to see her husband's car. She paid the driver and went to the door. She had left her keys at the hotel, so she had to knock on the door. There was no answer. She rang the doorbell. Still no answer. After 20 minutes of trying, knocking, and ringing, she got frustrated and went to the back door. The door from the kitchen was never locked, and as she made her way to the pantry, she was rewarded with a turn of the knob. "Okay." When she was in the living room, she called out to him. She was sure he wasn't home since she had spent so much time knocking and ringing the doorbell. She went upstairs and ran herself a bath. Her muscles ached like they had never ached before. In all the years she and Jim had been married, he had always been an attentive lover. Mark took what he wanted and hardly spared her. She had never had sex like this before. He treated her like the whore she always wanted to be. Undressing, she stepped into the water and began to stroke her body. As she soaked, she tried to remember all the times Mark had brought her to climax. She couldn't even count how many times he had done it just on Friday night alone. It was truly a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Gradually, her thoughts left the bliss of the weekend and returned to her husband. She knew she would have to work hard. Jim would be very angry with her, but she knew that with good sex, he would submit. A wicked thought crossed her mind. Perhaps he would even let her spend more time with Mark. Perhaps that would be too much. She could ask Dee to cover for her when Mark wanted to see her again. Thinking of Dee, she grabbed her home phone and called her. "Hey girl, how was it?" "It was heaven. I've been soaking for the last hour trying to kick all the pain out of my body." "Wow, sounds like it was worth it." "Oh yeah, he even gave me his number so we can get together again in the future." "Yeah, like Jim is going to let that happen. Speaking of the loser, was he pissed when you got home?" "No, he wasn't even here. I bet he's at his parents' right now and sulking. I'm going to call him when I get out of here and tell him what I think for not being here when I got home." "Wait, you just got home today?" "Yeah, just before I got in the tub. Mark kept me occupied all day yesterday and even a few times this morning. Then he took me to watch him practice." "Jim wasn't home?" "No, like I said, he's probably at his parents' house sulking." She spent the next hour telling Dee how great her weekend had been, and by the time she was done talking, Dee was extremely jealous and very horny. By the time she hung up, the bathwater was already too cold to relax, so she got out and got dressed. She looked at the time and realized it was already time for dinner, and the kids needed to eat or their schedules would be disrupted. She called Jim's parents' house. His mom answered. "Hi, Mom. Is Jim home?" "No, I thought you went with them. He called me last night and said he needed to get away from the cold for a while, so he took an airplane and left last night." "Okay, I'll try his cell phone. Thanks, Mom." "Wait, why didn't you go with them?" "I had other things I had to do this weekend. Sorry, Mom, I have to go." She hung up and then tried Jim's cell phone. It went straight to voicemail. She left a very unpleasant message and then started looking around the house. She wanted to find her luggage that she had taken with her to the hotel. She looked around for her luggage and keys. Nothing. She was walking past the machine to the kitchen when she noticed a flashing light. There were several messages there. She pressed the play button. The first was from the hotel, asking about luggage and things left in the room on Saturday. Damn him. He hadn't even bothered to pick up her stuff, just left it there. She opened the garage and grabbed the spare keys to her car. She drove up to the hotel and picked up her luggage. He left only her stuff behind. On the way home, she stopped at the store and bought a bottle of wine. When she went to the cash register, she was told that her cards didn't work. Embarrassed, she put the wine back and went home. When she called the card company, she learned that the cards had been stolen and canceled. New cards would be mailed to her in 7 to 10 business days. Well, that was inconvenient, but she could wait. She called Jim again. Nothing. Left another message. With each call, she got angrier and angrier at him. He wasn't acting right. He should have been glad she was back with him and seized the opportunity to reclaim her body for himself. Not that he had succeeded, but he should have believed he had. On Monday, she went to work as usual, but it was far from a normal day. She was worried about Jim and the kids. It wasn't like Jim to just pick up and leave. She didn't know what to do. He was their father. And if he took them on a mini vacation, that was his right. The problem was that he hadn't said anything to her about it. He'd just left. Monday night, she called family and friends again to see if anyone had any guesses as to where Jim had taken the kids. She had a variety of options. His brother suggested that he might have taken them to a cabin on the lake. Jerry knew that if Jim was upset about something, he always went to the cabin to gather his thoughts in silence. The kids, she knew, loved it there. They had gone there many times, not just for vacations, but for quick weekends. There was no cell service on the lake, and the only way to get there was by plane, so the family had their own little seaplane. Jim's plane was a little bigger and had more range. When he came back, she was going to unload on him like she had never unloaded on him before. She told Dee about her plans when she heard Dee's husband remark that she had done the same thing to Jim. When Dee asked him what he meant, he replied that Linda had gone away for a few days without talking to Jim about it. He figured that Jim had just decided to get even. Linda knew that was true, but in her mind, what she had done was acceptable, and what Jim had done was not. Leaving work on Monday, she wondered. He'd left Saturday night, or maybe Sunday morning, which meant he'd be at the cabin either early morning or late afternoon on Sunday. She knew he wanted to punish her for the weekend, which meant he would be there for at least 2 days. So she figured he wouldn't be back until tomorrow at the earliest. But she doubted it. He was the type to spend a whole week there, all in an attempt to make her pay for doing something special for him. So she pulled out her cell phone and called Mark. He was more than happy to pick her up and spend the rest of the week with her. She arranged for him to pick her up at her house and then went home to shower and get ready. She had just had time to put on her panties and bra. Choosing the right pair had taken longer than she had planned. When the doorbell rang, she opened the door, and there was Mark. "I'm sorry, Mark, I've just finished getting ready. Come in, I'll just be a minute. Where's the bastard? Jim and the kids are away for a week, so I'm all yours. Wait here, I'll be right back." He smirked. She was surprised when she reached her room and turned around, and Mark was standing right behind her. He enveloped her in a hug and kissed her. All the passion and intensity she remembered from the weekend surged back into her body. She was powerless to stop him, so he pulled off her robe and then threw her onto the bed with force. He was driving her crazy. Then, with a smirk, he started kissing her body. At that moment, she lost all consciousness and gave in to the pleasure. The next time thoughts appeared in Linda's mind was when, after an unknown amount of ecstasy, she heard him say, "Now I'm going to take this asshole's wife in the marital bed." When her senses fully returned to her a short time later, she was lying in his arms. He looked at her and said they needed to take a shower. They took a shower. The shower witnessed a second round followed by a third in her bed. Finally, they showered again and got dressed. He took her back to his mansion again, and between dinners and passion, she woke up Friday morning. She had taken the week off, citing that she was dealing with personal matters. Mark had told her that he had to leave today for a promotional event, and she wasn't sure if he wanted to take her with him or not. She knew she needed to get home. She wasn't sure what his plans were until he walked in his suit, suitcase in hand, and kissed her on the cheek. "There's a cab coming to pick us up. We'll drop you off when the cab takes me to the airport. This week has been wonderful. Thank you for such an amazing week. We really should get going." She ran upstairs, dressed quickly, and came back downstairs just as the cab pulled up. Mark was on the phone with his agent about gigs and other things as they got into the cab. She gave the driver her address and sat in silence while Mark continued the conversation. Finally, the cab pulled up to her driveway, and Mark stopped, kissed her, and said goodbye. He returned to the conversation as she was getting out of the car, and her bag was already waiting for her on the sidewalk by the door. She walked into the house and was struck again by the silence. It surprised her how empty, lifeless it seemed. She walked to the kitchen and made herself some coffee, then went upstairs. The bath was calling her. The rest of the day passed in washing clothes and other small household chores. She talked to Dee a few times, as well as other friends and relatives. It surprised her that she hadn't heard from Jim's family since Monday, but she figured they would call when Jim and the kids got back. She spent Saturday working in the garden, trying not to look at the clock and wondering when they would be back. On Sunday, she began to get angry. As the day turned to night, she became angrier and angrier. Sunday, she hardly slept at all, and Monday, she was a mess at work. She spent most of Monday night again calling everyone she knew and wondering where her husband and children were, but to no avail. Over the next few days, she went from madness to worry, from worry to madness. When she went to the bank after work to get gas money, she was told that there was only $50 in the accounts. Jim emptied the accounts to withdraw the rest of the money. Linda was furious when she learned that the home repair account had also been emptied. She contacted his office and learned that he had quit. The Human Resources Department told her that he had been given his last check, as well as his retirement funds minus the fine. After a frantic search, she discovered that Jim had taken all the jewelry she had and all the valuables from the safe. A search of the children's room revealed that most of their clothes were gone, as were most of Jim's clothes. Jim's car was found at the airport, but no trace of him could be found. His passport and the children's passports were missing. The airplane was indeed missing. She learned that it had flown south not on Saturday, as she had assumed, but on Tuesday. Where exactly he flew to, she was never able to find out. He flew to Belize, and then took off and flew presumably west. There's no telling where he was headed. He disappeared, as did her children. All her friends and relatives were surprised at her idea that Jim had run off with the kids. No one believed he was capable of such a thing. When the truth came out about that Friday, and worse the following week, most turned their backs on her. Her friends, with the exception of Dee, no longer wanted any part of her life. She realized now that she had done him wrong, but she couldn't believe it was worth the pain he had put her through. It wasn't worth taking her children away from her. Her life had become hell very quickly. Without Jim's income, she couldn't pay her mortgage, she lost her house. The bills kept piling up until her credit rating was ruined. She started drinking to forget herself. 2 years later. Over the past 2 years, Linda had hit rock bottom and was finally starting to climb out of the ditch. First, she lost her job when she showed up at it too often drunk. Now, working at a new firm, she was slowly repairing the damage Jim's reactions had done to her life. She wasn't going on dates and had stopped socializing with her old friends. She lived with her parents, and other than going to work, she had no life. She spent all her free time looking for Jim and her children. She realized that there was no hope of finding them, but she kept searching anyway. She was sitting at her computer in her old room at her parents' house when she received an email. It was titled, "February Sucks," and although normally she wouldn't open an email from a stranger, she checked it out. Dear Linda, I'm sure you've realized by now that we're not coming back. Your action that night and knowing what would happen if I divorced you left me with no other options. I could either pay you to sleep with me and be a part-time father, or I could take drastic measures. I chose the latter. I'm writing this to tell you that I've moved on, and you should move on too. I found someone, and she loves the kids. They love her too, and we are happy. If you move on with your life and find someone new, remember what happened that day in February, and hopefully you will realize that you can't do something like that and not pay for it. No one would tolerate such disrespect. It wasn't signed. All because in a moment of madness, she went off with Marc Lavaliere. Even considering the week that followed, it wasn't worth it. Marc hadn't spoken to her since that day in the cab. 6 weeks after he'd dropped her off, he'd been murdered, shot by the husband of his latest conquest. The news reports that had at first made Marc a martyr gradually began to report the number of marriages he had ruined, and he quickly became reviled. Her nights were spent daydreaming about how she'd never agree to that damn dance with Marc Lavaliere and realizing that February sucked.